Welcome to September 18th meeting of the Livable Roadways Committee. If everyone would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. If we could do a roll call, please.
Councilmember Hurtak,
Here.
Yanika Mills,
Here.
Michael Marino, David Hay,
Here.
Emily Hinsdale,
Here.
Danielle Riffenberg, Larry Josephson,
Here.
Karen Kress,
Here.
Rebecca Hessinger. I'm sorry, did I hear Rebecca say she's here?
Here.
Thank you.
Yes.
Omar Pirzada,
Here.
Jason Jackman,
Virtually.
Nicole Dufa,
Here.
Gloria Marge Belangia,
Here.
Sarah Templeman, Una Johnson,
Here, virtually.
Catherine Coyle,
Here.
Arizona Jenkins, Gus Ignis, Ashley Anderson, Debbie Roney. Okay, 1, 2.
Danielle also just walked in.
Okay. I'm doing a quick count. I believe we do have an in-person quorum. Connor, confirm?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I don't believe we have anybody for public comment today, but maybe anybody. I think everybody's staff. So I just wanted to start out by announcing that last night City Council had our second budget meeting, and we approved $1.65 million to make Route 1 fare free for the year. From my understanding, that will be starting in January, and we got to try something. We can't just sit spinning our wheels saying, what do we do? So I'm very, very excited about that. And I'm sure that there'll be some actions from Hart, talking about the, how we can encourage folks to give it a try. So I'm just, a little hopeful today. So, we're gonna go straight to approval of the minutes from August 21st. Any changes? Any motion to accept them?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Karen and a second by David. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. So we have one action item and one status report, and then some old and new business today. So welcome, Gina.
Thank you. I'm Gina Torres, the Assistant Executive Director of the TPO. I'm also an avid softball player. And I like women's senior softball, and I had a ball coming at me that got caught in the sun, and I didn't see it. So I'm staying away as long as I could, but yeah, I can only stay away so much. I'm not in pain. I'm not eating. It just looks terrible. My grandchildren are scared to look at me. So, yeah.
When?
Yeah, we actually won that game.
Okay.
I missed a lot of it. So this has been several years in the making. To get to going forward to this draft access to an income long-range plan. You all have been really played an important role throughout the development of this along the way, getting feedback to us, different stages of data collection and sharing things with you. So thank you for hanging in there with us. And I have to. And you're really good at this stuff, but. You see, I have a chance.
It should be the arrow keys on the laptop.
Should be first.
Sometimes there's a little lag too, so.
That works. And why do you not? Sorry. No worries. I can think it's there. I'll stand over there. That works. Okay.
The signature.
Just put it in advance, the slides put it in advance, but it's. Want me to share? Share. Yes. Interesting. There. Watch what I'm saying.
So they probably didn't calibrate the AC and from.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about the.
Council chair. It'll be cold.
So Access 2050, it was a collaborative process. We followed all state and federal regulations to get to that cost feasibility plan, which actually I think you presented that in August. We balanced data-driven analyses along with a lot of public outreach, and we captured the voices of the community. And at the September TPO board meeting, the board accepted the draft and opened the public comment period. 30 days. So there's a review period open currently. See these, but just very briefly, we had over 4,600 surveys received as part of the outreach, and it was really collects a lot of our time and effort and to come out to hear us talk about what we were looking forward for the next 20 years in transportation planning. There's almost 90% of the survey respondents were either lived or worked in Hillsborough County, so we know that we're getting feedback from people mostly impacted by this plan's decisions. Staff attended 45 community events, gave an additional 11 presentations. We rode 5 bus routes, visited some transit centers. So we really feel like we were spread across the county and heard from different people, different modes of transportation, and their folks. The colors represent the number of surveys received. So those orange and purple colors are higher number of surveys in those areas, and then the green is lower number for those zip codes. The top 3 priorities we heard from the community through the survey was number 1 was newer and faster transit. Second was to reduce traffic jams, and the third was to maintain our roads and bridges in good repair. I'll show how the results of these survey responses fed into the cost feasibility plan slides. These slides may look familiar to you because they were presented to you in August, but the cost feasible plan had many different aspects that fed into it, starting with the survey that I just mentioned, as well as and forecasting efforts so we can determine where people were living and working in the future in our county. And the environment we held and participated in environmental consultation workshops so we could get some feedback from some of those groups about the impacts that our projects might have. The needs assessments were done for these 5 program areas, which should look familiar because we've even tailored our TIP this way. The last current 2045 LRTP is also these categories. So the first was smart cities, and it focuses on intersection and technology improvements to ease congestion. during peak hour. The second is state of good repair and resilience, and that focuses on maintaining our roads, our bridges, stormwater infrastructure, and transit maintenance. The third is Vision Zero, which is address the safety on our streets and really try to strive to reduce those fatal and serious crashes. The fourth is real choices for not driving, which includes expanded bus service and expanded trail networks. And the last is major projects, which has projects for road widening, new and modified interchange on the interstates and fixed skyway transit. So based on input that we got from DOT and our partners and local agencies and the public and our board, the revenue forecasts are based on the renewal of existing taxes with the exception of the second local option fuel tax. So with those 4 taxes up for renewal in the LRTP time period, it just didn't seem likely that we could actually, pursue that second local tax. So that one was removed from the revenue forecast. What you're looking at is really a conservative kind of approach, looking at trends, kind of how we're spending now, trend spending. But we're expecting $18 million to come to the TPO area over the next 2 years in this LRT. Revenues are allocated largely based on those current trends that we currently, spend on these different transportation programs. You'll see here that DOT, it's worth noting that they get a large chunk of the funding and they spend a large chunk of the funding on major projects. So that's why that green category is so large. And local revenues are mostly allocated to state of good repair, some, real choices. And that kind of reflects what we heard from the public in the survey as well. So 18 million does sound like a lot of money, but the plan ultimately in our needs assessment identified over 50 billion of needs that we have in our county. I would seem to be able to keep up with those. So this TPS staff and board, we really want to use the dollars that we have in the best way possible. So we have to be creative and working with our partners to implement things. We pursue grant funding and some other opportunities so that we can build some of these projects that are needed. So I'll share what was ultimately included in the draft plan, and this is the major projects. So we are very specific about those. The programs are more buckets of types of projects. This is again similar to what you saw in August. The strategic intermodal system cost vehicle projects haven't changed since you saw that last presentation, other than the board asked us to add the I-75 interchange at Fort Hammer as an unfunded need. So by the way, when I go through these, this is just, I'll highlight things that were different from what you saw in August. So that was one of the changes to this particular category. The non-SIF state roadways remained unchanged from what was presented. These include several widening projects across the county that provide state roads. There was one change to the local cost feasible roadway projects, and that was to include Lithia Pinecrest on the cost feasible list. And you can see that. Or maybe you can, but oh yeah, it's in blue on the map. The fixed skyway rapid transit remains unchanged with the arterial bus rapid transit from downtown to the interstate area and the cost feasible plan. Although what you might see at the end when we finalize the plan, because right now it's a 30-day public comment period. I think I'm pretty sure Johnny can correct me that we're going to show the extension of the street park on here on this map. It's not here because it's being funded in the current CIP, not the long range, years out. But I think we heard from people that that's what they really wanted to see. We want to make sure that we're highlighting that project is important and coming. The other 4 programs are expecting a lot of benefits, hopefully over those 20 years, almost a 50% reduction in peak hour delay in our smart cities program. The ability to maintain our roads and bridges, a reduction in bike and ped crashes, overall crashes as well in the Vision Zero program. We anticipate seeing 43 miles more of trails over the next 20 years with funding that we build those programs will receive. So the action, I actually changed this a little bit from your write-up because this committee is kind of caught in that weird place where the TPO has already accepted the report and opened the public comment period. But we're also not to the point where we're asking you to adopt this because we're waiting for the public comment period to end and including a lot of things that we've heard from the public. Actually, currently, there was public comment received on the I-275 project, and should that be in here and requesting that it, be reevaluated for whether it should be funded, types of things. So I don't have a lot to share with you because we're just kind of trickling in the different comments that we're getting, but I think it's good for the board to know that the LRC, accepts the report and will provide comment. You can provide comment here now. We'll capture that in the minutes, and I will, make sure that makes its way into the LRTP, and any changes that happen too, based on the comments that were received, then that's going to be presented to the board at the next October meeting. Or also our committees, where you guys meet. So if you want to listen in to some of the committees, we'll be sharing those comments. So welcome to hear anything that you guys want to tell us how you feel about the plan, and also seeking acceptance.
Any comment? I do have a comment. I spoke with Dr. Wong about this during our individual briefings. If you go back to the rainbow slide.
Yes.
So one of the things that's very frustrating as both a member of the TPO board, and just a general citizen, is we don't really have any say over what is in green. That is the FDOT funds that. We're just simply approving that they're moving along with these, but as we're finding out with the 275 project, there's a lot that we don't control. And so I would love to see that somehow broken out into two separate sections, because the other four are really areas we have more control over. We can move some money around, or I think it gives us a clearer picture as both an advocacy committee, and just seeing what we can actually affect, I suppose. I don't know if everyone wants to talk a little bit about that, but just.
Hold on here. I know that what the CISCA we weighed in and gave our 2 cents to the DOT on their projects and made recommendations and suggestions. So that's one place that we can bring in.
I'm going to say no one comments. Yes, Councilwoman, you're right. The discretion that the TPO has over many of the major projects is dependent upon which jurisdiction is moving those forward. So for FDOT projects, they're kind of assembled into one large cost feasible plan, and either you accept it or you don't. We could try to break these apart by jurisdiction, so we could show you how many are within the discretion of Hillsborough County, 3 cities, if any at all, and which are major transit projects, if any at all. So yeah, absolutely, we can make that change, and we'll make it in time for the board presentation. Once we get it complete, we can circulate that to the LRC so that you have seen it before the board.
I appreciate it, because I just think 2 little rainbows would be a little bit, and give us a better idea of what areas we want to focus on, because it's very clear by the surveys that people want us to focus on 3 things that aren't green. They're pretty clear that green is not a priority. So I just want us to be able to focus on that, but thank you.
Sounds
Yeah. Question?
Yeah, I had a procedural question. It might fall under this, or it might fall under new business. Is this the presentation that was presented at the meeting on 9/11?
Yes.
Okay, so in that meeting on 9/11 at the TPO, it was very interesting because there's a line item in there dealing with Washington Street. That was the TIP. All right, so now I'll talk to you.
Yeah.
We'll bring that up under new business. All right, thanks.
Anyone else? Any comments? Any thoughts?
I just have a question or reminder for myself. The fixed guideway slide was for BRT. Not the streetcar.
Correct. But we're gonna add that.
Okay. Do we call BRT fixed guideway now?
parts of this alignment.
Just wondering.
Could possibly, and when I'm talking about sort of downtown and USF, there's still a lot that needs to be decided on, but the idea or the desire would be like, maybe not Fowler, because a lot of right of way there, that piece of it, the bus would be in its own space, like without car sharing lane. So I don't know, we don't know yet specifically, but that would be considered. I guess it's really not fixed
It's not,
driveway, but it's.
not by definition. That's what I was wondering. It's just, okay, that's fine.
But I think it would be fixed because you're gonna have to build those stops. So fixed in the way of, I mean,
It's also like the dedicated
lane.
Which they can restripe.
Got a shooter alignment.
But
Like the route is in its own space.
Okay. Okay. So that is basically what you said. If a majority of the route has its own space, then it can be considered fixed.
Okay.
And can I follow up? If, are there protections that it remains in its own guideway, or can FDOT make a decision like, oh, there's a lot of traffic here, let's just put them in this bus lane? And I assume they could restripe, right? Of course they can, right?
I mean, here's how, and I hate when I start getting my personal feelings, but like lane repurposing, when we did Nebraska Avenue, we always said, we were trying to push for that, like, you can always put it back if it doesn't work. And it allowed it to move forward, I felt like. And maybe when things in public love something and it really works, that they're would be less likely to take it back. Same thing with like registers, things like that are happening.
Karen, yeah, I remember the Nebraska project and I just want to give a shout out to Gina. I feel like you really were the one that advocated and made that happen, and as a pilot project that's still in place today.
Yeah. But that just goes to show you. See what works, people.
I just feel like I have to, again, express my disappointment that so many of the transportation funds are restricted to certain areas, which doesn't allow us to put more of them into the number one priority that we heard from the survey, which is, a better transit system. So I don't know if this committee can fix that, but
Noted.
keep saying it.
It'll be noted in our comments. That's a public comment.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And now we need to accept the draft. Is there a motion to accept? Motion by Emily, second by Nicole. All in favor? Okay, motion carries. Next, we have a status report on the High Injury Network social marketing.
Your presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Sarah Hendricks. I work at the Center for Urban Transportation Research at the University of South Florida. And I'm going to be sharing with you the results of a safety campaign that was conducted this past year. And it's safety outreach on the select high injury networks in Hillsborough County. So a lot of thought and effort has gone into identifying those corridors within the county that have high numbers of high rates of crashes. And so that is the purpose of focusing the safety campaign on that. So I'm standing in for Julie Bond. She was the principal investigator for this project. Emmett Duran is our sponsor. This study was funded by the Florida Department of Transportation District 7. And this safety campaign was guided by the safe system approach that was adopted by the U.S. Department of Transportation, which is an approach that is a departure from the convention of the past. It recognizes that human beings make mistakes and human beings are vulnerable. It says that fatalities and serious injuries are unacceptable. It requires that responsibility for safety be shared, and that safety is something that we can proactively prepare for before the crash happens. And so we've used this, and you can see this wheel shows that there's a lot of different elements to the safe system approach, including safe vehicles, safe speeds, safer roads, post-crash care, and safer people. And one thing that I like to point out here is that we can have the safest vehicles, we can have the safest roads, but if you have reckless drivers, even the safest speeds, but if you still have drivers that are driving distracted or aggressive, you're still going to have crashes. And so that travel behavior element to the safe system approach is essential to this. And that's what the safety campaigns focus on, is changing travel behavior. And our campaign is a little bit of a different approach in that we were looking at changing what we refer to as traffic safety culture, which is developing a positive social norm for safe driving behaviors, including driving your car at the speed limit or less. And so there were two podcasts that were produced. One was featuring Dr. Johnny Wong and Gina Torres, talking about the purpose of the study. There's a recording here, but I don't think it works. So good. So what are high injury networks or PINs? They're corridors with clusters of severe injuries and fatalities. The most fatal crashes are typically on roads posted at 4 miles per hour or higher, and they typically exhibit driving behaviors that include aggressive, distracted, and intoxicated drivers, high speed. And so this is just a real quick timeline of the project. We started out in February of 2023. The initial phase of the project included a situation analysis where we went out into the field to see what's going on these high injury network corridors. It included a literature review. And then based on our findings, we developed a campaign, a highly targeted campaign. We pre-tested the messaging, and then implementation of the campaign began in September of 2023. And concurrently with that, we did the monitoring and evaluation at the same time. So September 2023 through April of 2024. And so these are the high injury network corridors that were looked at. The first one is 50th and 56th Street from Martin Luther King Boulevard to Hillsborough Avenue. The next one is 56th Street from Sly to Bush or Bullard. The third one is State Route 60 or Adamo Drive from Orient Road to Falkenberg Road. Then we have Florida Avenue from Waters Avenue to East Bougainvillea Avenue. Nebraska Avenue from Columbus Avenue to East Hannah Avenue. Sheldon Road from Hillsborough Avenue to Waters Avenue. And then finally, 50th Street from Fowler Avenue to Fletcher Avenue. And the final report has an appendix with all of these illustrations that are in this presentation, by the way. And there's an appendix that has all of these high injury network corridors, specifically with the locations of all the crashes. So you can go in and see specifically where these are taking place. And what we noticed is the vast majority of those crashes are happening at intersections. So we started out with the literature review, and because we knew we were going to be targeting a large audience, we focused on looking at past safety campaigns that were effective that also focused on a large audience. Safety campaigns can be very, very different. It can be education, it can be outreach targeted to specific groups, or it can be kind of a widespread large audience where you can use billboards and digital ads and print, radio, TV, social media. So we looked at those types of campaigns to see what we could learn, what's effective and what's not. And the literature review is also in the report. It's chapter 2. It's quite detailed. It goes into looking at different types of evaluation. So there's a process evaluation that looks at how was the campaign, how was it launched? What was the process used to make sure that it was effective? Was the process that was laid out followed? And what can we learn from what actually happened? So the next time we do a safety campaign, we can do it better. So that's a process evaluation. There's an output evaluation that looks at intermediate performance metrics, which is what we generated with this particular study. And then, of course, there's impact evaluation, which is our ultimate goal. And in this case, we want to reduce fatalities, reduce serious injuries. And so these are, this is just a short list of some of the takeaways from the other campaigns that we found, campaigns that tend to be stronger, have these kinds of elements. There's many more that are discussed in the report. The report also has abstracts that feature specific campaign write-ups. There's a table that goes into some detail on different types of performance metrics. So based upon the amount of time that we had, the timeline which was quite short, as well as the resources that we had, we focused on this first one. So focused on a behavior. So based upon what we saw, we focused on speeding as the main behavior that we wanted to address. We focused on a particular audience segment, and those were motorists, although we did have the participation of what we refer to as vulnerable users, which are people who are walking, biking, using public transit, motorcycle, e-scooter, e-bike, wheelchair. And then we targeted, very narrowly targeted our campaign on a specific geography, which were the high injury network corridors. These are some other things that are discussed in the report, thinking place-based strategies where you can control the environment better, like a school or a large employer. Pre-testing the campaigns, we did this to make sure that the messaging that we came up with resonated with our target audience. This is just, the step wedge is just a type of a quasi-experimental design, which is particularly strong for being able to kind of parse out other confounding factors in the environment that might be going on at the same time as your safety campaign. So what we want to try to do when we evaluate a campaign is understand, so what did the campaign contribute to the change? And typically in the real world, there's other campaigns going on. There's road construction suddenly in the corridor that you're trying to study. There's variability in law enforcement. So there's all kinds of confounding factors that make it really challenging to specifically measure what did the campaign do. Monitoring observable behavior. And today there are ways of doing that. Data services companies collect sensor data from motor vehicles. So there are ways of doing this. And they're quite efficient because you don't have to go back and measure a baseline. They already have that history. So that's a way of getting observed behavior, collecting baseline and evaluating both short and long-term results. With this project, we only had enough time to collect short-term results. And so we did a situation analysis, and that was going out into the field and looking at these hidden corridors. And for each one of the corridors, we did a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, to better understand our target audience, which were motorists that drive along these particular corridors, and better understand the built environment, the infrastructure that's there or not there, and how other roadway users are using that space. And so this is a table that shows, it's a 6-year time frame that shows the fatalities and severe injuries on these 7 hidden corridors. And this table does not show crashes that resulted in minor injuries or property damage. Severe injuries are defined by Florida statute as those that cause disabling injuries, permanent disablement, or disfigurement, scarring, etc. The other important thing to know is that these corridors are of different lengths. So the smallest one was 15th Street, which is about a mile long. And then I believe it was, Florida Avenue was Adamo Drive was 2.6 miles. So there's a difference in, the length that these numbers represent. And so the next 14 slides, show these infographics that attempted to, in a small space, summarize the information that was gleaned from crash analyses using signal form analytics, looking at plans and reports that have been done, focusing on those with the particular corridors, also stakeholder interviews. Most importantly, my colleagues Julie Bond and Brendan Bosher went out to each one of these corridors. They drove the length of each corridor. They took public transit on each corridor, those that had public transit service. They walked the length of each corridor. They bicycled each corridor. And along the way, they had an opportunity to talk to people who were also on that corridor to get their experience. And so these infographics, there's one for each of the hints. It's in the report, and you can actually read it and see it better in the report. Each one of these goes into like 2 panels, so you can see the fine print. But essentially, it summarizes the infrastructure, the types of crashes, typically intersection crashes that are happening on these segments of highway, the circumstances around which the crashes were happening, and also some demographics about the people who were involved in the crashes. What else? Also, the report has a lot more photos that are what are in this this presentation, but they went out and they documented everything that they saw. And a lot of the things that they saw were, on these corridors, there's been a lot of effort already, as well as planned efforts to put in infrastructure, particularly pedestrian safety infrastructure. What Julie and Brent saw oftentimes were, even if the bike lanes, for example, were continuous, oftentimes the bike lane might adjust its alignment to accommodate left-turning motorists. So if you have an adjustment of a bike lane, that can be very confusing to bicyclists and motorists alike. In some places, there was no infrastructure, like 15th Street. There was no place if you were a bicyclist or a pedestrian to be. So they were looking at all of these different pieces for each one of these corridors. We also did a preliminary campaign SWOT analysis on one of our key institutional partners, which is the Florida Department of Transportation. So strengths and weaknesses are internal to the organization. Opportunities and threats are external, which are things that are outside the agency's control. So the strengths are things that you can leverage. Weaknesses are things that you can address. Opportunities are things that you can attempt to capitalize on, and threats are elements that you try to mitigate. And all of this information went into the development of the messaging, the campaign messaging, and the tactics. Those are a number of different tactics that were used. The idea being having different kinds of tactics reinforce each other, and they reach different people within this particular target audience. And this is just an example of the tactics that we used. We did use NHTSA messaging. And one of the key things that we had done was use geofencing, which is essentially creating a virtual boundary using GPS around these different corridors, so that when a motorist or a vulnerable user passes into the corridor, a social media a message is delivered to that person. So that was the way that we were able to very specifically target motorists and others using these hidden corridors. So we got impressions that's a metric of the number of times that a message is delivered to an individual recipient. And of those, we got over 20,000 people who clicked on the messages. Then of those, over 6,000 clicked on within the message was a post-board traffic safety quiz, which was one of our main elements of getting information out, as well as monitoring and evaluation. We also did neighborhood mailers, postcards. And we did signal cabinet wraps with artwork. And we did a survey of pedestrians that used those intersections. There were 3 hidden corridors that had signal wraps at the cabinets at the intersections. We surveyed the pedestrians to find out what they thought the artwork was conveying, what was the message, and they got it right. So the artwork was to convey how to safely use crosswalks. And so that information is also in the appendix if you want to see specifically the artwork in that. We also did 2 project podcasts, one initially that talked about the need for safety conditions in the hidden corridors, and then there was an evaluation follow-up podcast. So what did we find? What did we learn? A number of different things. So first of all, about 80% of the people that took the traffic safety quiz had never seen some of the messaging and presentations that have already been out there, like walk, bike, drive, safety tips, or bike smart, or bicycle friendly driver. And what that tells us is that we have an interested audience that decided to click on this survey and take it because they're interested in the topic. We have an interested audience that we can continue to engage. We got a good spread of people representing a broad range of ages from age 18 up. The participation tended to skew older, to people 55 and older. And this is an opportunity. We see this as an opportunity because for future campaigns, we can potentially engage the older members of the community who demonstrate an interest and a concern about safety, to use them as what we refer to as influencers. And influencers are people whose opinions are important to you. So based upon the particular audience that we're interested in targeting, we want to know who are the people in that person's life that can influence them. And we can target the influencers to help spread the message. And so not only influencers, but then interveners. That's a next step where you empower and encourage people to speak up if they see something. Like, for example, if I were driving the car and I have a passenger who doesn't put her seatbelt on, I feel empowered and I feel comfortable saying, hey, would you please put on your seatbelt? So that's an example of intervening. Let's see. So 62% have either taken or expressed interest in taking the Florida Highway Safety and Motor Vehicle that's a driving class. About 30% of them already did take the class. And the reasons why they did it, they were motivated to either reduce violation points for their driving record or to get the discount on their auto insurance premium. But what we found here is there is a big market to push out these defensive driving courses to the community. So there's an opportunity. And we also know that incentivization works, and it's really important to use incentivization for something like this. So most people are not offended by receiving a do not disturb text message response. So what we did was in the follow-up survey, we posted a hypothetical question. So let's say you send a text message to a loved one and you get back a do not disturb. I will respond to your message when I arrive at my destination. How do you feel? And so the survey gave sort of a Likert scale. Very happy, happy, either happy or unhappy, unhappy, very unhappy. What we found were 85% said they were either happy or very happy that their loved one is using the do not disturb feature on their phones. They're glad because they know that their loved ones are taking measures to not be distracted while they're driving. There's another 14% who said that they were indifferent to it, either happy or unhappy. And only about 2% said that they were unhappy, that they didn't get an immediate response. So what we know is from this is there's a positive social norm for using the do not disturb, and people are not offended by receiving that message. Now, on the opposite side of that are the people who feel compelled to respond to text messages. And in another a project separate from this, Target Zero, where that particular project is focusing on young males between the ages of 18 and 34. We did formative research with them and focus groups and asked them about this. What are the things that bother them while they're driving? And they don't necessarily initiate texts and phone calls, but they get them on their phones. And if they see that they're getting a text from a loved one, they feel compelled to answer because they feel that, well, I may offend them if I don't respond right away. So with text messaging, there's a kind of an immediacy to that type of communication. And so there's another opportunity to put messaging out there in the future that says, hey, it's okay. It's okay to use the do not disturb feature on your phone. And this is how to do it. And you can even personalize these messages so that they're not brusque, you can make them gentler. So that's an opportunity. Another finding is that not all motorists know the reasons why bicyclists may take the full travel lane. And so in the Hillsborough County or the Hillsborough Traffic Safety Quiz, we focused on questions that had to do with generally like new regulations like the left turn yellow arrow, what's that mean, but also how to interact with pedestrians and bicyclists at intersections. And so this was one of them about how do you share the road with bicyclists? And it was a question that had to do with why would bicyclists take the full lane? And there were 3 answers, and the 4th one was the correct answer, and that was all of the above. So the answers were bicyclists want to make a left turn, they would avoid debris in the shoulder of the bike lane, or they may want to improve their visibility to the motorist. In other words, they might place themselves in the middle of the lane, which they are by law allowed to do. And bicyclists especially might want to consider doing that if it's a very narrow lane, because they don't want the motorist to feel tempted to try to squeeze around them when there's really not enough room to do so. This is an opportunity. We had like 15% of motorists who took the survey that didn't know the answer to this question. Not all motorists know that there's a number of reasons why bicyclists might want to lawfully take the bicycle lane. And we also know that this is important considering, so a recent Tampa Bay Times article in May about a fire chief that assaulted a bicyclist.
There's a video.
In the full lane. And this was a little, coastal town, small, low posted speed limit. It was designated a shared lane. So there's a lot of people out there that don't understand this. And so that's a piece of information that we really need to take forward for future campaigns. So we learned something there. Also, the question on the quiz that we got the lowest number of people, lowest percentage of people that answered correctly was a question about what's the most common crash type between a motorist and a pedestrian at an intersection. The most common crash type is when a motorist is making a right turn. So what we decided was take that one question and in the follow-up survey, ask it again. The people who took the follow-up survey were people who initially took the quiz and we asked them, said, okay, if we contact you again later for future activities, and they said yes. So we surveyed about a little over 230 people who took the follow-up survey. And when they encountered that question, 65% answered it correctly. So 54% to 65%, I'll take it. That's a bit of an improvement that suggests that if they are encountered with information on what to do, they will retain it and use it. It's also really important because it tells us for the future, what are the kinds of messages that we need to put out there? Specific messages, what is it that we're asking people to do? So with motorists, what we're asking people to do is when they get to an intersection, first of all, complete stop, not a rolling stop. Second of all, don't just look to the left because they're looking to see if there's cars coming so they can make a right turn. Also, look to the right to see if there's a pedestrian about to step into the crosswalk. So that's a very specific action that we can target as a message to motorists. When you're turning right, look right. And then the pedestrians, if they're stepping into the crosswalk, before they do that, the pedestrians need to understand, they need to look over the shoulder and look to the left, see if there's a motorist about to go into the crosswalk. When I'm at intersections, I see a lot of pedestrians and they just, they get the walk signal and they just start walking and they're busy looking at their phone, they're not paying any attention. So this is another piece of information that we can take, a very specific safety message going forward. And then lastly, we asked, all of the survey participants it was an open-ended question. What are your suggestions for making Hillsborough roads safer and more comfortable for all roadway users? A lot of feedback. We put all those responses in the appendix. So if you wanted to see the specific exact answers, responses that we got back, that's in the report. But in general, what we did was a content analysis of all of this information. And there were some themes that emerged, 7 different themes with regard to what can be done. Increased law enforcement, increased traffic control, such as signals. Let's see, here we go. Outreach and education. Improving highway capacity for motorists. Also strengthening multimodal options. Maintenance of the existing system, like potholes and repaving surfaces. And then devising new regulations. And so what we found was all of the safety quiz participants that tended to skew older, the themes that kind of rose to the top were law enforcement first, and then traffic control. Then we looked at the vulnerable road users, what they think was most important. And strengthening multimodal options rose to the top, and law enforcement. And then we also we pulled out all of the participants of the survey that were age 34 and younger. And they said primarily the themes that went to the top was strengthening multimodal options and traffic control. So it's interesting to see how different segments of the audience will prioritize these things differently. So these are findings that we can take forward for future campaigns. So the report has a number of different conclusions and recommendations, including behavior change takes time, conduct detailed behavioral analyses, which informs the safety messaging that you should put out there, reinforce community engagement. We did, when we were going out on the corridors, we did outreach to all the businesses, and we did have some businesses that were interested in partnering with us. For example, there's a Harley Davidson dealership on Adamo that allowed us to use their facility. They would plan to host motorcycle safety events and so forth. So partnering is important to this, customizing the messaging, and then establishing clear evaluation metrics. So this slide is in the presentation because we anticipate that people would want to know, well, what are the crash statistics for 2023? And it looks pretty good with regards to fatalities. There's one outlier from Shelburne Road. Unfortunately, there was a toddler that had left their house in the middle of the night and wandered into the road. So that's a bit of an unusual situation, but 0 fatalities. So this safety campaign, we are not claiming causality of the safety campaign. It takes, in order for a safety campaign to be folded to make a difference, you need a much longer time frame, because what you're working on is to change traffic safety culture. So for example, like high visibility enforcement campaigns where law enforcement are going out and enforcing traffic regulations after safety messaging has gone out. Those are really effective, particularly during those times of the year where there's holidays, and we see spikes in crashes. So that's a really great time to use high visibility enforcement. But what I think that perhaps we have all experienced is that you're driving along a highway and you're going 10, 15 miles per hour over the speed limit, just like everybody else. You're just driving with the flow. You see a law enforcement officer parked there, and all of a sudden everybody slows down while you're passing the law enforcement. And then half a mile later, everybody speeds back up again. And so while there's short-term gains, which is very important because it does reduce crashes, the motivation there is, well, I'm going to slow down because I don't want to get a ticket. What we're working towards right now is to internalize the message then it's better to drive the speed limit or less because it's the safe thing to do. And we're trying to turn that into a positive social norm. Right now, the positive social norm is it's okay to speed. Everybody does it. That's what we need to change. Now, if we look at campaigns like NHTSA campaigns of the past 20+ years to reduce drunk driving, we see a downward trend in the number of crashes year by year, statistically significant downward trend that tells us that the campaigning that NHTSA has done, along with all of its partners like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, has made a difference. I can say today, drinking and driving is a lot more socially unacceptable than it was when I was a kid. Likewise, but it took about 20+ years to begin to see that. Likewise, smoking. My parents' generation, everybody smoked. My generation, maybe half the people smoke. My daughter's generation, it's socially unacceptable to smoke. There's a lot of time, a lot of resources and effort that went into making that change. But I would say it's worth it, just like it's worth safety campaigns that target reducing fatalities and serious injuries by targeting the precursor behaviors that lead to crashes. So that's with that completes my presentation. If anybody has some questions, this is some contact information.
Thank you. This was
Yeah.
excellent.
I just have a quick question on different surveys you've done and different questions you've asked. Has it ever been asked of the drivers, did they ever ride bicycles as children or in their younger lives? Were they ever taught how to properly ride bicycles?
Right.
Sometimes I think it's the perspective. I grew up in a much smaller town. We were trained in elementary school, middle school, like how to ride bikes. We rode bikes to school. We knew the rules. The drivers drove slower. They just knew.
Right.
But in Tampa, raising my kids, I've taught them how to ride bikes, but I don't think the drivers know how they don't put themselves in that position. Because I don't know that they grew up riding bicycles or
Right.
learning how to do it correctly.
That's a really good question.
There's got to be some empathy, I think.
Right, exactly.
You know,
Yeah, that's a good question. That's
I put that out there, especially because you got older people that are really responding and wanting to be engaged.
Right.
30 years ago, they might have ridden bikes in their neighborhoods in Tampa.
right, exactly.
Nowadays, they might not.
Yeah.
Rebecca.
How do you define a serious injury?
So it's in the Florida statutes, and I don't know what verbatim, but they result in permanent disability or permanent scarring, disfigurement.
Karen?
This is great information. Sounds like it was a lot of work. I wonder if you could build on it and if DOT is open to that. Sounds like there were a lot of kind of engineering changes that might also really help slow people down.
Absolutely,
And I'm kind of semi-obsessed with no turn on red right now as a very low cost example.
Right, exactly. And when we went out to the different corridors, there were a lot of instances where there were improvements that had already been made, or we were aware that they were in the planning stages, like Nebraska, for example, a lot of pedestrian improvements. But yeah, I think that is, it's, I think it's acknowledged and recognized that infrastructure is an essential part of it. And I think more attention is now being made to go back and retrofit intersections and create a safe space for vulnerable users.
So were those recommendations included in this plan? You said there were some observations made, like the bike lane ends or what have you.
Right. So for each of the corridors, the report goes into some discussion about what they observed. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point about the no right on red. We're starting to see the true need for that, especially in downtown areas. Just on my way here, somebody just ran a red light. What? Right through. But, okay, anyone else? Thank you so much. It was really very educational. Really appreciate it. And look forward to what you're doing next and how to build upon this. Do you have any particular plans? To further this study or to build on it in different ways?
Not that I know of. That would be a good question for Julie Bond. We're always interested in following up, doing more. And, this is definitely an area that it's near and dear to our hearts. We also are working with, central office, FDOT central office, their safety office on the Target Zero, campaign. It also uses a social marketing approach, to specifically target audiences and doing formative research. So they understand what resonates with them and putting out messaging that, targets them. Yeah, we would love to do more work.
Great. I appreciate your passion.
Yeah, thank you.
It's comes through.
Okay, so we are on to old and new business, and I will go ahead and start with David because he has some.
I just wanted to bring to this group an observation that I made that I think the group will find kind of interesting. On the TPO meeting on 9/11, there was a discussion about the Florida Avenue Transit Study. And the chairman kind of asked some questions about why are we spending 1.3 million on a transit study for this roadway? And staff got up there and explained that it's more than just a bus stop study. It's a land use and there's other components to it. On that same slide, there was an allocation for Washington Street, which if you are unfamiliar with Washington Street, it's about a half-mile road. It's off 50th Street. It's in the coastal high hazard area. It's wedged between the canal and the Crosstown Expressway, the Selma. In 2020, the Planning Commission, there was a private application for plan amendment at the end of that road. The Planning Commission recommended denial. The city council, though, did vote to approve. On that evening, and I pulled up the transcript, part of the discussion at city council was, and this is the applicant's word right from the closed captioning, quote, "There's no question, council, it is substandard." That's Washington Street. "It does not meet current requirements for transportation. It does not have any sidewalks. It doesn't have drainage facilities. Our client is going to have to improve this to city standards." And we'll talk more about that in the rezoning stage. But the improvement is going to cost a significant amount. Our client has to absorb these costs and develop them. Well, from what I've been able to kind of uncover, and hopefully if I'm saying anything wrong, I hope somebody corrects me. There's been 3 allocations for that half-mile road, up to $12 million. It's a local road. It's a dead-end road. There's 7 privately owned parcels on that road. And I bring this up because to me, we are always in this meeting talking about how we have no money to do any of like the projects that we are kind of wanting to do. And then it's my understanding that this is coming from the state, actually, this money for this local dead end road where there's only 7 parcels on it. It goes through saltwater marshes. There's property owned by the Expressway Authority, property owned by Swift Mud. It's very wet and but knowing that, because I was at that meeting at City Council, and that's why this rubbed me the wrong way, that here we have that the applicant stated on the record that they were going to absorb the cost into their project. And I would assume that that council took that into consideration, that they were going to do that. But to find out that there's been $12 million when we're starving for sidewalks and crosswalks and things like that, I'm hoping that we maybe can get more information about how does this happen? How do we get these projects that is a significant amount of money for a dead end road. That's my opinion. And, it's not like Lithia Pinecrest where there's people that are using it and it's a part of the transportation network. This is 7 parcels, privately owned parcels. So I'm going to request that maybe we get some additional info about how does the state you know, how does this happen? That when we have what projects that we think are important, like transit, it doesn't seem like we get the funding, but then mysteriously, and there may be a good reason. I know I had some conversations with Wade about when you look at the county trail map, there's a trail that is supposed to run either on the north side or somewhere within proximity of the road. It's my understanding none of this 12 million goes to that trail. Could be wrong, but it's those type things that I think why we can't have these nice things that we all want. So I think we need to understand how this happens and is this an infrequent, frequent thing that happens from the state that they're sending money for local roads? I don't know if anyone has any questions, or Wade, you've got any explanations?
Respond with the information that I have.
Okay.
That money, my understanding is that it was the subject of a legislature earmark for this project. I have been told, and I'm waiting to confirm this with Tampa Mobility staff, that is passed through FDOT to the city of Tampa for design and building of this roadway. It does include a proposed portion of the bypass canal trail to connect there. So that's something that's assuming that the information I have is correct and that it is going through the city. We would hope that they would include that, but I'm going to be reaching out to Vic and Brandon Campbell to see if I can get some more information on that. Be happy to bring it back to the city.
I would love an update. If you get an email or answer, if you could forward it to me, I'd really love to know, because not only was there one in 2020, when I joined council, there's a second.
On the south side.
Yeah, I want to say that was maybe 2022, early 23. And I voted against it because they needed to like build it up like an insane amount of dirt and the road was really in poor condition, and that they said that, oh, well, we already have to improve it. But again, I believe the reason that others passed it was thinking that the developer was going to pay for the road.
Right.
That's normally what happens.
Yes, but you know, if you have friends in the legislature, they'll just do it for you.
Yeah, that's
But that's our taxpayer.
Yeah, it is.
that's why I was like, how does it become I mean, I guess the state just could say, we in Tallahassee think it's a priority and it just magically comes down here, but it just rubbed me the wrong way. So I thought I'd let you all know that occurred. And to me, I don't get to decide these things, but I think a whole bunch that we would all think $12 million could probably fund that are more important for the community than a dead end road with 7 privately owned parcels on it. To $12 million, not, I mean, that is a huge chunk of money. So I don't know if we need to make a motion to ask for additional information to come back and just,
Sure.
or is that?
That's your wish.
Yeah, okay. I would make a motion that, when do you think's a good time? Like a month, 3 months?
Next meeting.
Next meeting? All right, I make a motion that at our next meeting, we get additional information regarding the improvements and the funding of Washington Street between 50th and 56th Street. And also the fund of how often that type of allocation occurs in the last, I don't know, what do you think, 3 years? 5 years?
If you'd like a summary of earmarks for transportation projects, is that?
Well, I would think it would need to be targeted to local roads, because to me, if the state wants to fund a major road, I don't know if you could separate that out, but that to me, it's more that it's a local dead end road than
The
just.
second part of that request, I'm not sure on the timing. We info back on Washington Street, but as far as legislative earmarks, that might take a little more time to think this out on the request.
Okay,
Go
well,
out 3 months.
But we will.
why don't we do 1 month, and then if you need additional time, we can just at next month's meeting say, keep up the hunt, I guess, or something. So
Yes, sir.
is that a good motion? You're good with?
Do we have a second?
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion by David. I heard Emily second first. Any other discussion about it? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
I just want to point out that the plant high rowing boathouse is right there, so just let's add that into.
So that's, again.
So possibilities.
That's all I'm writing to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing. So it says on old business that we have something about I-275. Is there someone?
Yes.
Okay, Connor.
Um,
I think it's that.
so actually first, if you don't mind, I'll, since we're talking about next month, staff has been focusing a lot on the LRTP, so we don't have as many presentations, coming forward in the next few months. So the options could be to, have both a meeting in October and November, kind of similar to today with a lot of opportunities to comment, or have a fuller agenda in November and cancel the October meeting. So I just wanted to.
And just so folks know though, that we do have a night meeting for October in TPO to discuss, I believe, the LRTP,
Yes.
the final vote. So if we were to cancel October, I would encourage everyone to go to that evening meeting and show your support or opposition to certain measures. But I'll take it from the group as to what you all would prefer to do.
I prefer November instead of vote personally. Second. That's a vote.
Okay, anyone else? Have any true opposition? Okay, well then, we'll take off October's meeting and move things to November. And then, like I said, if you wouldn't mind, Connor, sending out an, information about the evening meeting and encouraging folks to either go, or if you can't go, ways to share their opinions. And if you do decide to share either on email, know they're generally read out. But also if you do decide to do that, please mention that you are a member of this committee. I think that does carry some weight. So if you can't come in person, but if you can't come in person, it's 6 p.m. downstairs on the second floor. So.
Absolutely, I can do that.
Okay.
Regarding the I-275, those permits affairs, believe it was in June or July, the committee motioned and approved to request more information on that segment regarding the TIP hearing. So we have been coordinating with UPDOT to get more information. Right now, there's not information that we have shared, so I just wanted to update you that we're still coordinating with UPDOT and hopefully we can get more information very soon. So that is the update on them.
So if we do get any information before that meeting, can you pass it along by email?
Yes.
Okay. Seems to be a new trend that I'm seeing a lot, is that we're not getting information on things we ask. Not just here, but just overall until like the last minute. So that's disappointing, but. Okay, and Gulf Coast Safe Streets Summit, or I'm sorry, does anyone else want to say anything about the 275? That's gonna be a highlight of the LRTP, or, conversation next month.
I have some, but it's not that. So, it's under addendum, so I don't know if we need to, I have a question about this. So I don't know.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, if it has to do with 275, might as well.
No, it did.
Oh, it doesn't, okay. And then the Gulf Coast Safe Street Summit, is there someone here to talk about the registration invitation? Says Lisa Silchar.
Other than to say that it's gonna be a phenomenal week. The focus, hopefully, if you are interested, it's really affordable. I think got a dynamic speaker that normally would be hundreds of dollars to go to a conference for this. It's like $25, and it's 1 to 5 is the main event on Wednesday, October 9th. And there is also some mobile workshops for that. There's also an evening, Thursday evening chat in the community. It's at Seven Planks Garden Center. But Gil Penalosa is so great, and you'll really be inspired to hear him speak as a guest speaker on the summit at 1 o'clock, starting on that Wednesday, dedicating the summit to a woman. We're dedicating it and honoring died at Portage Street. Lisa Reed. It was actually the same day that the Bayshore Boulevard crashes happened and fatalities. Great stuff. I wish I could tell you more. There's opportunities for sponsorship and that's of any interest. If I'm missing anything, there's drink tickets for that evening. If you want to walk over to the reception afterwards in Channel District to be held at the port. I've got kind of the main pieces. And there's a website and registration open at the Gulf Coast State Street Summit. You'll find it that way. Did you want to add anything? Because Emily, because you have a lot to do with the event that Thursday.
Yes, TPO and the and Walk Bike Tampa are hosting the evening event with Gil Penalosa at the Seminole Heights Garden Center. So get your tickets to that. That'll be fun because that'll be a smaller setting where we can actually have some conversations rather than like the lecture setting. So you could actually meet Gil Penalosa.
Okay, anyone else? Emily, do you want to talk
Yeah,
about?
I'm just gonna do my reminders. Sunday is World Car Free Day. Everybody be there. It's gonna be the best event in Tampa all year. And at 10:30 a.m., we will be hosting the Kidical Mass bike ride from about the Poe Garage down Cass Street to Perry Harvey Park and into the Encore community in downtown, led by Councilmember Lynn Hertak. She will be our leadoff rider. We have about 40 people signed up already. I expect a lot more than that. I hope a lot more people will choose to come. Bring some kids, bring yourselves, ride with us. Should be a fun event. And then if you're not tired of bike riding and walking, October 9th, which is the same day as the Gulf Coast Safe Street Summit, is National Walk and Bike to School Day. We have so far 28 schools registered in Hillsborough County. Last year we had 33. The previous high was 16. So we talked a lot today about behavioral change, cultural shift around driving. This is part of that effort. If we make walking and biking normal for kids and an exciting thing to be a part of, then we can really shift ideas on what we need on our roads. So if your child's school is not signed up or a school in your neighborhood is not signed up, visit the Sidewalk Stompers website. We have materials for everybody.
Could I just clarify World Car Free Day? And Emily's put a lot of work into that. We're both on a committee and there's activations in Midtown, downtown, which is at Encore and Ray Charles Boulevard, and also in Ybor City at the HCC campus. You can use the CAS cycle track and the Great Spine to get between all three of them. You can certainly take transit, walk, and even drive to the sites if you want to. And then we have, I think, 3 different kind of community meetup rides heading to the different locations. So it'll be, hopefully, the weather will cooperate. Definitely bring your water with you because it will be warm, but unfortunately, we can't control when the date of the world event is.
Yeah.
So it's really grown from last year to this year, and we hope kind of onward and upward from there.
Yeah, last year's event was excellent. So looking forward.
This year's is a lot bigger. There's
Yeah.
just a lot more going on and a lot more groups that have been interested in participating.
9 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, anything else? Anyone? Okay.
Something.
Yeah.
And this, I just saw it on the addendum, item G. So I don't even know if anyone's here could even answer this question, but the resurfacing it runs from, I guess, Bloomingdale all the way up this FDOT. I guess it's a study or design but the issue has always been at 301, just north of Bloomingdale, where 75 is. I know I've said this 1,000 times. I've seen people with baby carriages. I've seen children. I've seen old men walking through that interchange, and there's not one pedestrian amenity at all. Because now there's apartments on the north, there's a movie theater on the south, there's drugstore, everything the city has is right around that interchange, and there's no facilities at all. So I don't know if it says just resurfacing, because it seems like they resurface that every couple of years. If we know when they're ever going to put the pedestrian infrastructure in that interchange, I know they've done it on others where, it kind of guides people across these, very fast on-ramps and off-ramps. So I don't know if we could get info, or it doesn't have to be I don't know.
I can definitely contact the project manager. So,
Thank you very much.
so I have the three things, the Hillsborough to Bears, this US 301 resurfacing and the Washington Street. So I'll follow up on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's.
Somebody's gonna get killed in that interchange. But
Anyone else have anything today? Okay. I guess we'll see everyone in November then, but I would love to see some of your smiling faces, in October at the evening meeting. So, we are adjourned.
I'm gonna sign up for the kid of the mass of my grandson.
Excellent.
That would be fun. I didn't realize this. So that's.
You don't have to sign up.